I'm Yağmur Özbay. I'm a PhD candidate in social psychology at the University of Amsterdam, and I study the social impact of art engagement. I focus on questions such as if arts can help us engage with complex or difficult social issues that we might otherwise avoid, or if art engagement, like reading a book or watching a movie, could facilitate social cognition. For example, making us better at understanding other people or empathizing with them. So in our latest research, we tested if people are more likely to opt in for engagement with negative issues that involve violence, suffering, or harm through artworks as compared to non-art forms such as news photography. And what we found when we tracked people's engagement choices and the duration of engagement that they stayed with the content is that people are more likely to choose art to engage with negative social issues, and they are more likely to also stay with the content once they choose engagement when it's presented through an artwork. Through aesthetic experience, the engagement may be emotionally more balanced. For example, a painting can present us with despair or sadness or grief, and we may feel this emotion very deeply, but we may also stop and look at it and appreciate the formal elements. Like we can feel the beauty in vibrant colors, we can look at the composition and think that it's very balanced and beautiful. So through these sort of positive emotions that are simultaneously occurring, or mixed emotions that balance the negative emotion conveyed by the artwork, we can have an overall more, let's say, accessible or bearable experience and stay with the content so we can reflect on it. Because emotional difficult content, the reason people avoid it is because it's costly to us. If we don't get something out of it, if we don't feel like we're learning something, if we don't feel like we're getting a novel perspective or we're getting aesthetic rewards on it, like positive emotions, it's more likely that people are not going to choose to engage with it. So art creates this powerful space to choose something and stay with something, because we know that while it may be hard, it also has positive sides or benefits to us. The most important message of the research is that art is powerful in a way that it doesn't only just provokes very strong or moving personal aesthetic experiences, but through that it can connect us to others, and it can sort of make information that we might otherwise avoid or shut down in response to more accessible to engage with.
My name is Wendeline Flores. I'm the curator for Caribbean culture and colonial history right here in the Wereldmuseum in Amsterdam. We're studying an exhibition called Our Colonial Inheritance, and I was the lead curator of this exhibition. We also very purposely use contemporary art in this exhibition. So on the one hand, it is because we want people to understand that it is about the contemporary and not just about colonial history. But we also wanted people to be able to reflect and think about certain topics within the colonial inheritances, and art can sometimes make you question it a little bit more, or make you think of critical questions, whereas a museum text or an historical object sometimes cannot do that. One more important thing about the exhibition is that we wanted to have one key theme throughout the whole exhibition, which was about resistance, resilience, and creativity. And actually that theme is also something that Yağmur was referring to. That is something that contemporary art or art in general can relate to and also maybe show better to people. A good example of this is the work behind me, the work by Jocelyn Gardner. And what you actually see is that you see the women from the back. You don't see their faces. And she researched the work of Maria Sibylla Merian for these portraits. And Maria Sibylla Merian was a botanical drawer. She went to Suriname for her research at the time, but she was helped by enslaved women in her work. And she also wrote about that they were helping her, that they were sharing their knowledge with her. And one of the things they shared is that they actually were very aware of which plants and flowers they could use to abort their children. And why was that important is that that was actually a form of resistance. Because if you are an enslaved woman and you are pregnant, then you already are aware that your child will also be born into slavery, and some women actively choose not to have their children. And what Jocelyn Gardner is emphasizing in her work is the captivity. So you see the chains around their neck, which is a very cruel detail. And on the other hand, it is a good example of what Yağmur is saying, that it's also very aesthetic work. But then when you look at it more deeply and when you hear about the context of the work, it's a very tragic and horrible story. The work that we are looking at now is a work by Fabiola Jean-Louis. She's a Haitian American artist, and her work addresses also the physical violence of slavery. And this was important for us to address in this exhibition, but it was very difficult for us to determine how are we going to talk about slavery and the violence and also the physical abuse that came with slavery without repeating it, without hurting people, but also on the other hand without shying away from it. And this is a very good example where we try to address it, but actually with the help of Fabiola. And what you see in the work is not just the physical abuse that you see on the back of a man named Gordon, but you also see actually a sort of a beautiful and powerful woman, as she is painting this story, so she is in charge of it. And at the same time, you see that the scars on his back are also on her back in the dress. So there's an afterlife of this colonial violence as well.
One way to make this experience more accessible to a wider audience would be to take socially engaged art, when possible, out of the museum or out of institutional art experiences and embed them in public spaces like a park, like on the streets. It could be in education curricula. It could be also in digital spaces like social media that we very frequently engage with and get information or get exposed to social issues that are happening around the world today. So it would be easier to bring the art to people rather than bringing the people to the art, since we know that it's not the art label that allows this experience, but rather it's the aesthetic experience that sometimes objects can help us have.